Good afternoon, Saugeen, and thank you for tuning in for the virtual presentation today. For those of you who may not know me yet, my name is Melissa Snowden, and I am a first-term Saugeen councillor and currently the chair of the Housing Committee. I hope everyone is staying safe through this third lockdown. I know that this pandemic has been really affected everyone over the last year in one way or another, but with the vaccine now available, I hope that this soon comes to an end. Until then, please continue to social distance, wash your hands, wear your masks, and most importantly, stay connected and check on your family and friends. We were really hoping to do this meeting in person back in March. However, here we are again, forced to conduct our meetings virtually. However, the upside to that is that members can view the video when it's convenient to them, and we will keep the commenting section open for 30 days to allow sufficient feedback from community members. Now, before we jump into the presentation on the Housing Strategic Plan, I wanted to provide the community with a few other housing updates. Last Saturday, May 1st, we held our groundbreaking ceremony for the 4 new Habitat for Humanity builds. If you would like to view the YouTube clip, please see the link provided below. This is our first partnership with Habitat, and we are thrilled and dedicated to ensure that this project has successful outcomes. Habitat for Humanity brings communities together to help families build strength, stability, and independence through affordable home ownership. We are very thankful to begin this newfound partnership with Habitat and see this as the beginning of a very long-lasting, meaningful relationship with them. Habitat will be taking volunteers as early as May 10th. Due to COVID restrictions, however, at this time, they are only allowing 10 volunteers per site, and only those who live in Saugeen can volunteer until the lockdown is lifted. So let's rally together, Saugeen, and support our 4 families. If you have some extra time on your hands over the next few weeks and months, please sign up for a volunteer shift through the Book a Shift portal on the Habitat Grey Bruce website. If you don't have access to the internet, to sign up, please call 519-371-6776, extension 3, and leave your details on the automated assistant. Additionally, if you would like to provide snacks and beverages to our volunteers, please contact John McLaughlin, the resource manager, at 519-371-6776, extension 102. To learn more about how to volunteer, please check out the video in the link below. Moving on to the next update, our housing department has recently handed out packages door to door for community members who live on reserve. Within these packages is some valuable information to some free energy efficient upgrades for your homes. The program is called the First Nations Conservation Program, and it's delivered by First Nations Engineering Services Limited and the IESO. The package includes 4 resource materials. One outlines some of the programs, what qualifies for replacement and what doesn't, and as well as there is an application form to access this program. This information will also be available on our website at www.saugeenfirstnation.ca. And if you are interested in this free service or would like more information, please contact our housing youth intern, Darren Kimwan, at darren.kimwan@saugeen.org, or you can call 519-353-8460. And just please note that applications for this program are due May 31st, 2021. The last thing within this housing package is a spring maintenance list for basic home care. So this one is a really nice resource piece for those who already own their own homes. So I just want to say thanks to the housing department for getting this package out to the Saugeen households, and I hope that those who are interested apply for some of the free upgrades. Now, moving on to the main purpose of today's presentation, joining me today is Scott Flamond of Flamond Management Services. He is the consultant that completed a housing analysis and draft strategic plan for our housing department. This work began last term as the previous housing committee seeing the need to really begin addressing the housing concerns here in the community and wanted to create a proactive plan forward. So I wanted to take the time today to say a big thanks to last term's Housing Committee for setting this plan in motion and giving the new committee a good place to begin. Speaking of our new committee, I'd like to acknowledge them this afternoon as well. This term's Housing Committee consists of myself as the chair, Councillor Gail Mason-Stark as the co-chair, and community members Mark Mandawab, Aaron Kuwakum, Vicky Cameron, and Cherie Ursler. Since the beginning of their term, these community members have shown dedication and commitment to this committee, attending regular meetings as well as the training provided. It's great to have support of this awesome team alongside me as we try and move plans forward and begin solving our current housing crisis. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Scott Flamond, who will now walk you through the presentation for the strategic plan.
Thank you, Melissa. Morning, everybody from Wakumukong. My name is Scott Flamond. I'm a band member of Wakumukong. I'm very happy to be here today and to present your strategic plan. I've been working with Saugeen First Nation for the last 18 months. We've seen a lot of changes in those last 18 months. You might have noticed we've updated your housing. We created a new housing policy. We created a new home ownership program so that band members in the community could either build a new home, purchase a new home, or renovate an existing home that they own. So you can access that program through the home ownership program, and you deal with the Bank of Montreal. I also provide financial counseling. I'm going to talk about that at the end of my presentation, but I'm the guy, if you've called a person, seen the posters around the community about home ownership and personal financial counseling, that's me you're talking to. I'm the guy who at the other end of the phone. So what I do is I provide counseling services to Saugeen First Nation members in terms of financial counseling. And you don't actually have to be interested in home ownership if you're just want to know why my credit sucks or if I have problems budgeting. I will help you with that. So again, I'm the guy. So we're going to talk about the strategic plan today and do a presentation. We're a little bit behind schedule, obviously, with COVID happening. This was supposed to be completed last year. It was completed, it was just we couldn't roll it out because of the lockdown. But the purpose of the whole strategic plan is to guide the community leadership and the housing committee and the housing department over the next 5 to 6 years. Some of the stuff we talk about in the strategic plan, we have a questionnaire that's on SurveyMonkey. And this is your chance, Saugeen members, to make a contribution to our strategic plan to plan your future. So we ask a number of questions that we need to get kind of some results from the community and what their thoughts are. For example, we're going to ask a question on arrears, what type of housing we're going to have, how many houses are we going to build a year, what type of renovation program should we have? All these questions are going to be finalized in the final strategic plan and hopefully move the community forward. So it'll be a blueprint for the future. And it's great too, because a lot of exciting things are happening in your community right now. If you probably noticed with Melissa's update that they have the Habitat Project. I'm helping with that as well. I'm very proud to be assisting First Nation with that. We're also looking at doing more CMHC projects in the future. CMHC is kind of new to your community, but it's a program that's been widely used by a number of First Nations across Canada. So I work with about 40 First Nations across Canada, from Newfoundland to Vancouver Island. And it's typically the common issues with most communities is obviously maintenance issues and rental arrears. So again, those are the top things on our list, but we're going to talk about other things. So one of the things we want to do in Saugeen, we want to have a sustainable housing strategy. What does that mean? Well, we want to have a housing program that stands on its own, which means that all the revenue coming in from all our housing services is enough to pay for all the bills, including operating funds. So right now we're not there, but we'll get there close. So what does that mean? That means we need to develop a rental regime with little or no arrears. What does that mean? That means we get people paying rent regularly and on time. And we want to decrease the dependence on members on Saugeen to provide maintenance and renovations and shift more responsibility to members. So we're not saying that Saugeen is not going to do any maintenance. It's just that we're going to be a little bit more strategic in our thinking and how we manage these repairs and maintenance. So some of the things too we're looking at in our strategy is educating band members on some of their basic responsibilities. For example, when you get a new apartment now, we're going to have move-in inspections and we're going to do mini maintenance workshops. For example, we're going to show you, this is how you reset the breaker. This is how you change a stove element. This is how you change a furnace filter. This is how you clean out your HRV, clean out your grills, and teach you about housing maintenance. Like, don't hang blankets on windows. that's a common feature in a lot of First Nations. That's actually one of the biggest, I guess, causes of mold is actually blinks on windows, and that's all about education. So when you put a blanket on a window, you're creating a hot cold zone with no air circulation, and that causes mildew buildup and condensation on the windows, which leads to mold. And that's a serious problem because our building code today, these houses are so airtight now. It's very important that there's ventilation and proper airflow. So that's why we want to educate members on their basic responsibilities. So we'll train members on how to do some of the basic responsibilities for maintenance. And if we do these little things, it's going to go a long way in making sure our houses last. One of the other things that we're building into which is in the housing policy and the strategic plan, is doing annual inspections on band-owned rentals. And the reason we're doing that is we're catching these minor repairs before they become major repairs. For example, leaky faucet in the kitchen. The bathroom vanity. What happens if we don't fix that after 5 years? Well, on an annual inspection, we will catch that right away. And if the tenant doesn't know how to change it, housing department will fix it, make sure it doesn't leak anymore. But if we didn't do annual inspections and the tenant didn't fix that, well, you know what will happen in 5 years? Instead of a 10-cent job to change that ring on the faucet, now the water leaks under the vanity, maybe rots out the subfloor. Now a 10-cent job just became a $7,000 job. We got to get a new vanity, maybe we have to deal with some mold issues and maybe a new subfloor. So that's why it's important we do these annual inspections so that we get these minor repairs. And the other thing too, by doing these annual inspections, these houses are going to last longer than 25 years. Why can't we have houses last 30 or 40 years? We can. It's just a matter of maintaining them and ensuring that there's proper maintenance and yearly maintenance, not maintenance every 5 years. So that's some of the things, how we're going to reduce the dependence on the First Nation. So I'm not saying we're not going to do any maintenance, it's just we're going to be a little bit more smarter, a little bit more strategic on what we do. Okay, so implementing sustainable. So one of the things we're going to do, obviously, and that's why the purpose of this presentation and the questionnaire, we want to consult and inform and educate the message of cost of housing and promote sustainable housing in the community. So we're doing engagement sessions, information sessions. So this is the first of one. Some of you has probably been to some. I remember we did one with the home ownership program. I think we had about 30 band members crowded into the council chamber. So these are sessions that we are going to continue. Other sessions we are going to restart once COVID is over, is we're going to do personal finance workshops. We're going to continue with those, maybe every 2 or 3 months. And then the big thing is the community outreach, which will be led by me, where I meet with band members one-on-one. And we talk about financial issues, or if they want to build a house, I'll work with them to qualify and look for issues and concerns and actually help them through the process of building a house and making the right decisions. And then we want to implement and enforce a sustainable housing approach. Again, going back to our housing policy, which we did about 18 months ago or 19 months ago. So we're going to go back and enforce the housing policy. What does that mean? A lot of people think the housing policy, the purpose of a housing policy is to serve as an eviction tool or collect rent. And that's not true. The purpose of a housing policy is actually to make sure that these houses last long. And that's the sole purpose of a housing policy. Every major issue I hear about First Nations housing, deferred maintenance, rental arrears, construction problems, I could link back all the time back to the housing policy. So not properly enforcing or following your housing policy. So these are issues that we're going to fix. And, looking to the future, we hope to fix a lot of things and continue to improve the housing in Saugeen. That's our sole purpose. And then we want to go back to monitor stage 2, again, make adjustments, what worked, what didn't work. Was our arrears policy too lenient? Was it too hard? Maybe we should do biannual inspections instead of annuals to help new band members out. So these are some of the stuff that we're going to look at. We're always looking at tinkering our plan. How can we improve the housing for band members in the community? So there are 7 areas we look at, and then we generate a 5-year projection. So the first area we look at is arrears management and rental regime. So we set goals and targets. Repairs and maintenance. So when I say repairs and maintenance, I'm talking about band-owned units, not personal. Private. And then when I talk renovations, I'm talking about private, any private homeowners. And then new housing, we're talking about what type of new housing is available, what should we target, what should we build. So we're not only talking about van rentals or van-owned units, but we're also talking about private home ownership. What are some of the tools we can give band members so they can build build or buy their own house in the community. And then a big thing is we're going to concentrate is quality control. We're going to look at issues in terms of construction. What are some of the issues that we can do, and what are some of the strategies we can adopt to improve quality of housing and services in our community? And then we're going to come up with a communication strategy. We're going to come up with a strategy so that all the Saugeen members are informed of all the services available to them through the housing department, as well as their responsibilities. So we're looking at doing posters, brochures, tenant handbooks, maintenance brochures, perhaps even contests for people with the nicest yard. These are some of the stuff that we're looking at. And then we're talking about capacity development. So what type of training do we need for our community, not just our community members, but our housing staff, our band staff, our housing committee and chief and council? How can we, what type of training is available out there for them so that they can improve their skills, which if we can improve their skills, then that means they'll be in a better position to serve the community members of Saugeen. So that's one of the reasons capacity development is very big. And from that, we developed a 5-year plan based on these 7 initiatives. So, okay, so when we set our rental arrears strategy, the goal is to identify possible solutions and deal with this. And we're talking about these historical arrears. I'm not talking about your new rental arrears. Your rental arrears actually right now are very low. It's these historical mortgage arrears from a number of years ago. So when we set up a strategy, we want to meet 4 goals when we set up a strategy. First of all, we want to be fair to all tenants. So there are a number of people in the community who paid rent or the mortgage religiously and faithfully. So we got to make sure when we're coming up with a strategy, we got to keep them in mind. We want to be accountable and transparent in the process. So we want to make sure that we're treating everybody the same. So we're not giving any special treatment to any one particular person. We want to give you viable options that are accepted by the community, Saugeen, and workable for members. So if you're in arrears, we're not going to set you up by failure and say, okay, Melissa, because your arrears are so high, you're going to have to pay $1,200 or $1,300 a month. No, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to work out something, if it's adopted, a repayment plan that you can live with within your budget. And we want to ensure that this builds a foundation for sustainable housing programs. So the reason we do that is we have new tenants, we have new housing programs, we have new rentals coming. We want to demonstrate to our new homeowners and our new tenants that Saugeen is committed to treating everybody the same. And we're not going to let people off on arrears who owe thousands of dollars to the community. And one of the reasons we want to do that, well, people talk. And if other community members see that Saugeen let a lot of band members off with these huge arrears, then they'll say, why should I pay? And, it serves as a domino effect. So that's why it's important we keep these objectives in mind. So the current arrears, there are currently 122 housing mortgages and renovations loaned with 42 accounts or 35% arrears. The arrears total 1.2 million. That's a staggering amount for a small community. So that's 43 accounts, 35%, over 1/3 of our accounts in arrears. The arrears for capital housing mortgages for new homes and remains the most pressing issue. So this is the biggest issue we have in housing right now that they want to deal with. We did present it to the housing committee, and they felt we should go to the community and get their input. And that's why we have it on the Survey Monkey. So the arrears, what strategy is fair to all band members? Keep in mind, even though I said 43 accounts are in arrears, well, that means there's about approximately 80 people, 79 people who are not in arrears. So they paid faithfully. So how should we treat these 43 accounts that are in arrears? So 65% of the accounts are making payments. So, a majority of our band members are making payments. So we need to be fair to everyone. We need the community's input on this issue. So what's the strategy? So number one, should we require full payment arrears? So we continue to charge these members that are not paying, that we continue to send letters to emphasize that they need to pay just like everybody else. Or do we increase the term of the mortgage agreement to collect arrears over extended period of time? So the original agreement might have said 20 years, maybe we'll extend it to 30 years so that then the payments are spread out over a longer term, but we still collect the money. Maybe we make a member obtain a loan to pay arrears. So they go to a bank, borrow money to borrow arrears. Unfortunately, we can't force members to get a loan. Chances are some people might not have the greatest credit, so they would need some form of band guarantee, so that's probably unlikely. How about the member pay 50% and Saugeen forgives 50%? Well, how fair is that to the 65 accounts that are paying, that are in good standing? So if we're going to give this 50% forgiveness, how are we going to treat the other band members who have paid faithfully? So again, these are some of the pros and cons of each strategy. Maybe we go to small claims court. Obviously, that is an option. We can go to court. A few obstacles: we would have to hire a lawyer. Will create a lot of backlash in the community, and some people still won't pay even if we do take them to court. And there's also a statute of limitations on how far back we can go on the arrears. So that's another option. How about we report arrears to collections agency? So that means Saugeen would have to sign up with Equifax or TransUnion and report these accounts on a monthly basis, and it would probably ruin people's scores, because when you go on mortgage arrears or you go into default or it goes into collections, you automatically lose 90 points on your credit score. I know that because I'm a personal financial trainer, as I said in my opening remarks, and 90 points off your credit score is a big deal. You can go from good credit to bad credit overnight. So the pro of that, again, we can't force people to pay. It's a third party that would be doing our collections. So it wouldn't be the band office that would be calling you. It would be a third party calling you every week, even calling you at the office where you work. So these guys are professionals, and that's all they do every day is chase these old debts down. So that was something we considered. The con is, again, there's going to be some community backlash. We may ruin our lives because we'll be ruining credit. Maybe we negotiate a fixed amount based on the amounts owed. Okay, so maybe if you owe between 50 and 75,000, we want you to pay 500 over the next 5 years per month for the next 5 years. We're not going to get all our money back, but at least we'll get something back, and then we'll let you go. Maybe that's a possibility. But again, going back to our strategy, our goal of the strategy is to treat everybody the same. We're not treating everybody the same because these few people that are in arrears are getting off, and we've had people who paid off their arrears faithfully. And number 8 is not our favorite one: do nothing. That means we just let the arrears go. Again, it's the pro of that is less administration. We get rid of a big headache in housing. But the con is we're not treating everybody the same. Again, we're going back to that issue of 35% of the people are not paying. They're getting off the hook, while 65% of the people who had these mortgages are paying faithfully. So on the survey that we sent out, consider when you're picking which strategy you think Saugeen should adopt of these 8 strategies. Keep in mind, we're only dealing with 35% of the payments. These are 35% of the people are not paying, and 65% are paying. So when you decide which option we should adopt, keep that in mind. Say, if I'm paying faithfully, why should that guy get off? So again, keep that in mind. As Melissa said in her opening comment, she's going to leave the comments open for about 30 days. So if you have comments regarding the strategy, or answer the Survey Monkey and put your thoughts in there, and seriously think about what strategy we should adopt, okay, when collecting these old arrears. And then the arrears strategy. So we want to reduce arrears by 50% a year for the next 5 years. Again, develop a strategy to deal rental historical arrears. Again, developing a risk strategy, what appropriate strategies for the community, and that's why we're going to the Survey Monkey. So you'll be able to put your 2 cents, 5 cents in and decide which strategy you think is appropriate. And then once we deal with these old historical arrears, the next step is we got to look at the rental regime. What does that mean? That means we build a practice of everybody getting used to paying for all their houses, if it's abandoned or private. You need to get used to paying. There's no such thing as free housing. Even these Habitat for Humanity project that you were talking about, that Melissa talked about, which is a great program, even they have to pay every month for the house for the next 25 years. So it's important that we build this mindset into people's minds that there's no free housing in the community anymore. We have to pay some form of rent or mortgage if you want housing. And that's what makes these projects viable. If we want to do more projects, Saugeen needs a steady commitment from the community that we will be paying rent. Now, these rents are very affordable, because if you look at the rent in Owen Sound or the neighboring communities in the Bruce County, these rents are very low. It's very subsidized. So even though it's rent, it's actually very low rent. And some of the rent doesn't even add up to the cost of these houses because it's a social housing program. So Saugeen believes in early intervention in cases of non-payment of rent and assistance to tenants to make full recovery. So we want to do early intervention. We're not going to tell you 90 days after, hey, Scott or Melissa, you haven't paid rent in 3 months. No, you're going to be told, within 10 days when it's due, Scott, why haven't you been paying rent? We're going to send out letters, send out notices, maybe call you, set up meetings. And notice the last sentence, we said assistance to tenants to make a full recovery. So we don't want to evict anybody. That's not our goal of this housing strategy or the housing policy, as I stated in my opening comments. Our goal is to help you, if you're having financial issues, if you're having budget issues, if you're having other issues like you lost your job, whatever. We don't know what's going on in your life. It's important if you are having issues, it's creating difficulty for you to make these payments or make ends meet. You gotta call housing. Once you call housing, these notices stop, right? We don't send no more notices out. Now we know that you're in trouble and we're going to help you. So that's why we built a lot of flexibility, not only into our strategy, but into our housing policy, because our goal, again, is to work with community members. So it's important that you work with housing. And if you lost your job and you're looking for another job, you may not have an income. And then we may work with you and defer some of the rent payments till you get back on your feet, and help you get caught up through a rental recovery agreement. So we have these options and tools in place to help you. So if you know in advance you're not going to be able to come in on the 1st to pay your rent or your mortgage, call housing and just let them know, sorry, John, I can't make it in. This happened. I may be in on the 10th or the 5th or whatever, but you got to come in, work with housing, and get your payments either deferred if you're having difficulties, or work with them to restore your name and your credit with the bank. So again, we're very forgivable. We believe in social housing, and we're here to help band members. That's the sole goal of this strategy in our housing policy. So the rental regime, so some of the steps we're going to take is, again, we're going to review the default management section of the lease agreement with each tenant. So every time you come in as a new tenant, we're going to go over the consequences of not paying. Your first notice is 10th of the month, second notice is 20. 30 on the 30th day, you get your third and final notice, giving you 10 days to pay. So we go up to 40 days before you actually get an eviction notice. But we hope we never get there. And I think we've never gotten there in a long time. A lot of our tenants today are very cooperative, and they inform John, if they're having issues. Again, call the band office if you know you're not going to be able to afford rent. The other thing we're going to do is, a lot of people just don't know how to budget. They may have money to pay rent, but because they lack the budgeting skills, they just don't know how to budget for housing. And that's where I become involved. So I work with people to show them how to do a personal budget. The other thing too is we'll have, like I said in my opening remarks, we're going to have community personal finance sessions, which will include personal budgeting. So I do work with people up to 6 months on developing a personal budget and monitoring it. A lot of people I deal with actually do not do a budget, and there's a reason. Because they know they're in financial trouble. And the saying is, ignorance is bliss. They know they're in trouble, but they don't really want to face it. And that's where I come in. When I do a budget, I could see where the trouble is. And then I help them, get out of trouble, dig themselves out of debt, and kind of restore their credit. So that's the whole point of those workshops. And then enforcement, again, early intervention. Like I said, we're going to go follow the housing policy to a T. It's in your lease agreement. It says 10 days. We're going to send you a letter. Scott, why haven't you paid? Please come into the band office immediately. 20 days, 30 days, so forth. Hopefully, we don't ever get to that 40th day where we're doing an eviction notice, because again, that's a very stressful time for you and for the band office staff. They don't want to evict you. So it's important that you work with us and contact John. The other thing we want to do is, prior to you even applying for a house or even the mortgage, you got to do an affordability analysis. We want to make sure if you're going into rental, you can afford that. And same thing with a mortgage. If you're going to buy a house, we're going to make sure you can afford that house. And there's 2 checks we got on if you're going to do affordability analysis on rental, we do analysis of somewhat people working. We take their gross monthly income divided by rent. And if their factor is greater than 3.0, that means they're spending less than 1/3 of their income on housing. So in theory, they should afford that house. If you're below 3.0, that means you're spending half your income on housing. you cannot afford that place because you still got to buy groceries, you got to buy utilities, and so forth. And there's no way, and we're not going to set you up for failure. For people on social assistance, same thing. Ontario Works, we're actually going to income test you because we got to make sure your shelter allowance, which is your rent, and your heat and hydro is going to be sufficient to pay the heat and hydro and the rent for that house you're moving in. So we're going to make sure that you can afford it. Same thing with mortgages. The things we look at is credit score, like 680, and we look at TDS ratio. So these are things that we have in our toolbox to ensure that people are going into the appropriate size housing based on their existing financial circumstances. And then the rental agreements, we're thinking maybe go year to year. That's something we may decide to do. Again, it's just in the plans. And what one of the clauses that we'll add is that only tenants not in arrears would be eligible to sign a new lease agreement. So March 31st, if you're in arrears, you will not be allowed to sign a rental arrears new lease agreement, which means you're evicted. So the exception to this clause, the way to get out of that is if you know you're in arrears March 1st, March 2nd, and housing will inform you, and then you sign a rental recovery agreement. So you don't have to pay all the arrears by March 31st, but if you just have to make a commitment that you're going to pay extra April, May, June, or July to catch up. So these are some of the options that we're looking at. Some people believe that's a good option because I have this kind of clause in a number of my communities I work with. A lot of people thought there was going to be mass evictions on March 31st. It didn't happen. So housing's got to call people and say, Scott, you're in arrears March 1st. This clause kicks in March 31st. If you're in arrears and if you haven't paid the debt or you haven't signed a rental recovery agreement, you could be evicted April 1st. So these are some of the stuff we're thinking of. And if you have any concerns or comments about that particular clauses, write them down and let us know. Okay, so repairs and maintenance. So I'm talking about band rentals. So we want to, Saugeen will provide and maintain the residence in a reasonable state of repair suitable for occupation by the member. So we want to make sure not only that it's a comfortable place for you, but we're looking at health and safety issues. Are there mold? Is there leaking pipes? Is the roof leaking? These are the things we want to watch out for. The member must take necessary steps to repair damage to the housing unit caused by actions or neglect of the tenant on the housing unit. So the other thing about sustainable housing is we're going to develop an approach that is willful damage. If the tenant caused the damage, if you kick down your door, punch a hole in your wall, bust your own window, and you can't afford to fix it, housing will fix it. We'll fix that door, fix that window, but they're not going to expense it. They're going to set up a receivable. So if Scott, I'm a tenant, I'm a band member, if I bust my window, punch a hole in the wall, or I kick down my door, and it costs $600 to fix, and I tell housing I can't afford that, well, housing will fix it because it's a ban-owned unit. We have to fix it. But that $600 is not going to be expensed out. We're going to set up a receivable. So now, Scott, your rent is $300. Well, now it's $400 for 6 months. You're going to pay your regular rent plus an extra $100 to that door. Because, it's something, an expense we cannot afford for, again, willful damage. Again, that's the whole sustainable housing approach. The other thing, too, we built into those annual inspections. So we're going to review tenants' responsibilities during rental agreement. We're going to tell you exactly what you're responsible for: cutting the lawn, shoveling the snow, maybe cleaning the air, changing the furnace filter, making sure your vents intakes are all cleaned up. Stuff like this, we're going to make sure that you're responsible for. And then on the move-in inspection, like I said in my opening remarks, we're going to do mini maintenance workshops, show you how to reset the breaker, how to plunge a toilet, how to change a stove element if we provide appliances, and maybe even how to fix a tap if one's leaking. So we'll show you some minor maintenance tips so that you don't have to call housing every time there's a minor repair. It's something you could try to handle on yourself. Because the other thing too is we're also want to steer people to home ownership. So once you're a homeowner, you cannot call housing anymore to fix. So this is kind of a skill you should learn when you're young and through a rental program. And that's something you could take with you for the rest of your life if you become a homeowner. And then we want to, again, enforce the housing policy, like I said, tenant-related damage. And then the big one, annual inspections and redevelopment of a maintenance plan. So a lot of people, what does that mean? That means on band-owned rentals, we're going to do annual inspections. We're going to come to the houses once a year, probably in the summer, because we don't do these in the winter. We do them in the summer or the fall or spring. And we just do a quick inspection of your house, look at noting the minor repairs, and then prioritizing. Any health and safety issues we're going to fix right away. Then we look at we prioritize the repairs. Not everything's going to be repaired. For example, a chipped floor covering is not a high priority, but something that may cause mold, for example, if we see mold somewhere, that would become a health and safety issue. If we see water leaking somewhere, that's a health and safety issue we need to repair right away and make sure it doesn't happen again. So again, it's all prioritized based on what's important. We look at health and safety, what needs to be repaired within a year. The other questions we ask is, if we ignore this repair, will it cause more collateral damage? That's how we kind of prioritize things. So if it causes more collateral damage to the housing, we're going to definitely repair it right away. So these are kind of the definitions. When inspectors come out there or housing people come out there, that's what they use as a kind of a rule of thumb. And then anything cosmetic is kind of low priority, very low. As a matter of fact, we probably won't even do any cosmetic repairs unless it's absolutely necessary. Sorry. Again, so some of the things that were strategies is tendering out and service contracts. So maybe our furnace contracts, we can tender out all the units. Doing economies of scale. So what does that mean? Well, let's pretend we note that one of our band rentals needs a roof fix, and maybe 4 other band rentals need a roof fix. So what happens is, instead of tendering out one roof to a contractor, we'll tender out all 5. We should save money per unit. You know why? There's 2 ways a contractor makes money. So if I give him a quote for one roof, he's got to make money on the price. So the price will be high on a per unit. But if I give him 5 roofs, then he's going to make money on the volume. So the cost per roof should drop. And so it's actually more economical. It makes it more affordable to do all 5 at once. Then the other thing we're thinking about is standardization of fixtures, equipment, appliances. So no custom windows, no custom doors, all the stuff that we put in your house, the rental, we should be able to travel to the local hardware store and pick it off the shelf. For example, taps, toilets, windows, doors, they should all be standard. Any equipment should be standard. Stuff we can buy off the shelf locally. We don't have to order from Toronto, or it will take 6 or 8 weeks to deliver. So that's why we need to standardize. Again, doing preventive maintenance, again, cleaning the furnace filters, cutting the lawn based on what the tenant does and what the band does. Performing responsible postponement. So that's a term that was coined by CMHC. What does that mean? Well, it means, for example, if your roof is leaking in February or March, it's not a good time to change a roof in the winter. So we probably won't change that roof, but we won't ignore the repair. We'll do a bandage repair. Okay, that's what it's called. So it's called responsible postponement. So if your roof is leaking in January, February, we'll go up there, patch your roof. We won't replace it because we're not going to fix that. We probably are not going to fix that in the winter. So we'll patch it, and then we'll come back in the spring, April, May, when there's better weather, and we can change that roof. And that's what responsible postponement means. It means we'll do a band-aid solution now until better weather comes. Or a lot of bands use it when they know they don't have no funds right now. They don't have funding for the maintenance. It's near the end of the fiscal year. They'll say, okay, we'll do a band-aid solution for now until we get new money in April, and then we'll fix it. So that's what responsible postponement means. And then obviously requiring tenants to do some basic maintenance. Again, that's true training. Again, true to move in. The tenant handbook, we may offer workshops where people can come in the evening, and we do have trainers available in Ontario and through CMHC where they come in an evening, and people learn how to do minor repairs, change the tap, repair drywall, doing small repair jobs, doing a small electrical work that's not dangerous. So these guys will come in, give you some basic home maintenance tips and show you how to do stuff so that you're not always calling housing. And if you're a homeowner, then it's actually a good thing that you would benefit from. Okay, so let me get it back here. I'm a little bit ahead, sorry about that. So that's for, again, the other thing for band rentals, these are non-CMHC, so you have the CMHC and the band rentals. So we're going to look at some sources of revenue is RAP, residential rehabilitation. We're looking at IS. They do have programs available to IS for renovations. Obviously with rent, that's one source, shelter loans. And then there is a program for elders over the age of 65, which they can tap into. And it deals with mobility issues so that the elder can stay at home longer. So it makes them more independent. For example, wheelchair ramp or handicap bathroom or grab bars, stuff like this, so that the elder can stay at home. These are some of the stuff that's available to some of our band rentals. Okay, what about private homeowners? What kind of services do we want to do in terms of maintenance or renovations? So in keeping in line with the sustained housing approach, program and service will be developed to encourage homeowners to renovate their own homes. So what are some of the things we're going to do? Again, we're going to develop some services. They are eligible for CMHC programs that I talked about, the RAP and the HASI, home adaptations for seniors. Some IST programs are available for private homeowners, but the ban has to apply. And then number two, we have this program now. It's through the Bank of Montreal. It's called First Nations Market Housing Program. And you can go to the Bank of Montreal, and it's the same rules if you have a house in Owen Sound or Bruce County. You have to have credit score, you have to have income sufficient to pay a mortgage. So you can, under the home ownership program, you could build a house, you can purchase a house in the community, or if you're an existing homeowner, then you can renovate your house. The great thing about this program is the band's not going to tell you what to repair, because this money is your money. It's coming out of your bank account and you're making the loan payments. You decide what you're going to be fixed in your house, right? It could be all cosmetic. At the end of the day, you're only limited not just by your imagination, but by what you can afford. So again, the sky's the limit on that. Again, based on affordability, and I believe the renovations are about 75 or 100,000. And then there are bank lending programs, other that you could look at, the bank could look at, like RBC is another lender that they could look at. And then there's the Section 10 Ministerial Guarantee Program. Every band in Canada has number 4. Okay, it's called the Ministerial Guarantee. That's where the band guarantees the loan. The only problem with this is a long process. The other thing too is if the band forgets to send in a report to ISK for whatever reason or whatever program, nobody gets a Section 10 Ministerial Guarantee on the reserve. Doesn't matter if it's one report is missing, it'll hold up all these loans. Under First Nations Market Housing Program and the bank lending program, that doesn't happen. It's all based on the strength of the applicant, not the guarantee. Okay, that's one of the key success factors of that program. Okay, so we looked at housing density, and what does that mean? Well, we kind of figure out, you know, how many people on average, how many people on reserve, and based on the population and existing houses, how many houses do we need to house our current population? So we have a current population of 792. We have a housing, now the great housing density that you want to hit is about 3.0 or higher. Now 3.0, it means that on average, half the houses, there's less than 3 people, and then the other half, there's more than 3 people. So for a population of 792, we need about 264 units. Currently, we have 185 units. We have 20 abandoned units, so we have 165 livable units. So if we look at the housing required, we need 264 houses, and we only have 165. So our housing shortage is 99. Okay, if we do nothing for the next 10 years, that housing shortage goes from 99 to 147. And then our housing waiting list actually confirms this. Our housing waiting list in 2020 was 71. So you could see this calculation is very accurate. It actually almost matches the housing waiting list. That means we need about 99 houses to satisfy everything. So what are some of the programs we can develop to accommodate this? So again, we're going to build rentals and programs to encourage home ownership. And again, in keeping in line with sustainable housing approach, a home ownership program will be developed for members who can afford to build their own homes. So again, the home ownership program is not for everybody, unfortunately, because you do need income, you need to have a job, and you need a credit score and a good credit history to show that you can pay your bills to get into the program. And then the band rentals is for social housing, people who may not have the credit or the income to pay a mortgage. So that's why we're always going to have rental housing no matter what, because we do have people in that situation that are on social assistance that are not eligible for home ownership. But people that are working, have good incomes, and they want to live in the community, we've created a program for you. Okay, so some of the stuff we're looking at is CMHC Section 95, and actually we've started. Melissa was talking about that through the Habitat for Humanity project. It's actually a CMHC Section 95. It's a collaboration really between CMHC, Saugeen, and Habitat for Humanity. And then we're looking at rent to own. We may look at rent to own. These are non-CMHC projects. That's something we may, where the band builds the houses and then we rent them to band members on a rent to own basis. Now, because there's no CMHC involvement, so the rents are going to be a little bit higher than a rental, but lower than a mortgage. So it's that mid-range that we're looking for people who don't necessarily need social housing, but at the same time, for whatever reason, can't get into private home ownership. So this is something that we're considering. Then number three, obviously, there's that First Nations housing program that we've been talking about. So that's where the band member, you get your own mortgage. The only thing that band's going to give you is a guarantee. And by the way, we're not going to tell you what to build. You decide what you're going to build. You're going to buy your own plans. You're going to get your own contractor. You're going to make sure the project works for you. The only thing that the band's going to ask is whatever you build or renovate, it has to be to code. So it has to be built to either National Building Code or Ontario Building Code. So we'll look at that. And then obviously there's bank lending programs. There's a Section 10. So some of the other things that we're looking at is the tiny home program. So without even looking at the stats for Saugeen, because I work with about 40 plus First Nations across Canada, I already know the biggest segment of the population that is not being serviced on reserve is actually single people. So we're looking at developing a tiny home program for single people so that they could rent these units. We can also use them for people who are homeless or people on social assistance who are single, and the rents would be very low. These are small units, so they're only anywhere from 300 to 500 square feet, and the rent could be anywhere from 300 to 350 bucks. So the great things about this is you could possibly fit one, two, or three, actually 2 or 3 of these units on one lot, and they can all share the same septic because it's only three people. So that's one of the programs that we're looking at. And then there's the developer approach. The developer approach is just like off reserve. The way it works off reserve, a developer builds these houses and sells it to the public. Well, that's something we may consider in the future because it's very stressful building your own house because you have to have blueprints, you have to keep on top of the contractor. We're looking at the possibility of maybe Saugeen building these houses. They've already done it, and then turning around and selling them to band members. And that way Saugeen takes care of everything. They take care of the contractor, they do the blueprints, they pick out all the siding and so forth. So all of that, and a lot of people, they don't want the stress of new construction. They would rather come into a house and say, I'll take it. And a lot of my communities I work with, they've done developer approach for about 10 years now. A lot of them have done it very successful. They actually have open houses, just like off reserve where they have an open house on the real estate. They actually have open houses. And sometimes in one of my clients, we had 2 or 3 people coming in on a Saturday afternoon to view the house. And these houses sold very quickly. So these houses do not look like band rentals. They'll be like hardwood floors, 2 bathrooms, finished basement, fireplace, hardwood, French doors, patios, maybe a carport or a garage. So these houses are really over the top, and they would sell it for the cost plus a little bit of admin fee. So these are some of the options we're looking at. And then we want to encourage a program to encourage redevelopment under First Nations Market Housing Fund. So we're looking at that for private entrepreneurs. We're considering if you're a private entrepreneur and you have the income and the credit, maybe we'll get them a private band member to build an apartment complex, a 6-plex or a 4-unit plex. And it's privately owned, but it's rented out by the band member. So that's something we can consider. A lot of First Nations are looking at that. There are people on reserve who have sufficient income and could be landlords, just like off reserve, but this would be on reserve, okay? So these are some of the programs we're looking at. Again, Section 95, we can look at rehab existing band rentals. So if we have old houses, we can actually put this under a CMHC program and rehab the houses. So if the house is 30 years old, falling apart, we can put another mortgage on it and fix the house, bring it up to standard, and then re-rent it out for another 25 years. Okay, that just give you some. So new construction rent-own program, Saugeen will need to contribute equity, keep the rents low and affordable. So I help a lot of bands through this program. So what I do is, I've done a couple of successful projects. So what I do is I work with First Nations on how to get these approved at a bank. You have to demonstrate to the bank that there's a debt coverage ratio that they have to meet as well. They have to demonstrate that the rents coming in are sufficient to pay the bills without any band contribution. So I work with bands on doing this. I work with them on doing an analysis report. And the ones I've worked on, they've been successfully approved by the bank. It's privately financed through a lender, either Bank of Montreal if you want to go through it. But it's a bank. The band gets the mortgage, they build these houses, and then they rent it out to band members on a 25-year a rental agreement under a rental-owned basis. So at the end of 25 years, provided you've made all the rental payments, those 25-year rental payments, then the house is transferred to you. So it's another option of home ownership for members who may not be able to qualify for a mortgage on their own. So there's that tiny home I was talking to about. Tiny, they vary from 300 to 500 square feet. And then again, we want to address single people. And the prices vary from 50,000 to 90,000. So again, the cost of construction. However, when I did this slide was from last year, obviously with lumber prices going up, this price might have doubled. And the rent's as low as 300, depending on the financing used to build these units. So this is one project that was done in BC. They built 4 of them for 50,000. So they got a $200,000 mortgage. Their mortgage payment was, their mortgage payment was $1,056, and they were getting $350 a month. So they were getting $16,000 a year from rent. The insurance was $2,400. The mortgage was $12,000, and the maintenance they set aside. So they had expenses of roughly $16,272. So they were breaking even on this project. So it's a very successful project. Again, you got to watch make sure all the rents come in. This is why it's important that we set up this rental regime so that people pay rent regularly and on time. And then so we're doing the home ownership program. There's that First Nations Market Housing Fund. We have it in place. It's through Bank of Montreal. There's no Indian Affairs involvement. And then there's the Section 10 Ministerial Guarantee. There is Indian Affairs involvement. The difference between the two is one is very fast. Number one is very fast. You can get approval within 48 hours. Number two, even though the bank says you were pre-approved, Scott, I have to wait for this Ministerial Guarantee from Indigenous Services Canada. And that can take anywhere from a month to 3 months. In BC, it takes up to a year to get this. So even though I go to a bank now, I might not get approval until this time next year. So that's why a lot of banks don't use it. So number one, the approval process is almost immediate, less than 48 hours. You're told if you're approved. The other thing, I support this program. So because you are a client of First Nation Market Housing Fund, I work on credit counseling and helping people get into homeownership programs. So that's why even after the strategic plan is done, I'll still be around helping Saugeen members get into homeownership. So again, we're talking about quality control. In order to ensure quality control, Saugeen will need to develop some strategy to ensure homes are not only built to code, because we're always talking about make sure we built the code, but a lot of bands forget, let's ensure we have good workmanship too, and that only quality materials are used. So some of the things that we're doing is a material list. So when we're doing our band rentals, we want to look at developing a material list so that all our rentals have this type of material. For example, we're going to make sure maybe all our windows are triple pane for high efficiencies, that they have HRVs, this type of HRV in all our units, that's our balance. And then the faucets, like I said, I'm not joking. You get what you pay for on faucets. If you go to the Canadian Tire and buy those cheap plastic faucets, they're going to be leaking within a month. We want to buy the expensive name brand, high quality faucets for all our plumbing fixtures. They cost a little bit more, but you know what? They're going to give us less grief and headache in the future because if they're installed properly, they shouldn't leak. Then possibly we may look at building bylaws. Building bylaws means it would not just only apply to band rentals, but private homeowners too. So these are bylaws that couldn't be enforced by the band, and ensures, again, a bylaw is not there to be an obstruction. It's there for a reason. And normally building bylaws could specify that any structure has to be built to code. Could talk about how much frontage you get, and all of this would be included in the bylaw. So that's something we could look at. And then obviously the big ones is inspections. We want to make sure there's inspections before construction, during construction, and doing the final. So all of this is done, in steps, at least 6 inspections during construction, maybe 2 or 3 during renovation. So we want to make sure we send a qualified inspector in there to monitor work. Not only are they going to monitor for progress and compliance to the code, but we want them to monitor for workmanship, that there's no cracks in the walls, that the cement's properly purged, that the paint's being applied evenly and there's no leaks, that the plumbing's done correctly. So it's important that we look at not just code compliance, but workmanship is very important as well. And then we're going to develop a communication strategy. So how do we develop some of the strategies we're going to adopt to keep tenants and members informed of the housing programs available and their responsibility. So housing newsletter, maybe some incentive programs like we'll have contests for cleanest yard or nicest lawn, maybe even a barbecue, or maybe a non-monetary if you pay your rent consistently for 12 months on time, and then maybe we'll enter your name into a draw for something. Again, issuing tenant statements so tenants are aware of their balance and it's seeing that the rent's being applied to their balance. And then we're going to do the home ownership and personal finance workshop. So we're going to set that up. Then we're looking at doing their tenant handbook and a tenant maintenance manual. And then we're going to use all kinds of platforms like social media, the band's Facebook page, internet page, emails, so that we can email members some of the stuff that's going. And then obviously we're going to go the traditional road, which is posters. Again, capacity building, skills development and ongoing training to staff will be prioritized in order to better serve members. So not only staff, but also leadership if they're interested, and the housing committee. I've trained a lot of housing committees on some of the housing operations. So the better informed your housing committee, your leadership and your staff are, the better they're going to serve the general public, right? So some of the things we're looking at is housing policy, how to manage, charging and collecting rent. So what are the strategies in collecting rent from band members? Mold remediation, indoor air quality is very, these mold remediation and indoor air quality are very important today. As I said earlier, today's building code, our houses are so airtight today that if you turn off the HRV, sometimes there's no vent in the bathroom anymore or the kitchen. So if you turn off that HRV and 2 or 3 people take a shower, guess what? That moisture is not going anywhere. It's staying in the bathroom and that leads to mold. So that's why it's very important we teach band members about the operation of the HRV, and it improves air quality, but also it's mold remediation. Now, I live in an old house. My house is about 50, 60 years old. I don't really need a HRV because in the old houses, you probably noticed that they never had these mold issues that we have today. The reason there's no mold issues in these older houses is you can feel a draft on a cold December day. So the wind comes through, cracks in the windows, under the doors. These are old houses. They're not as airtight as today. So that's why we didn't have all these mold issues, 40 years ago. It's because we didn't have airtight houses. Again, we're going to look at Section 95 financial management so that we can better administer our program. And we're going to do home and property maintenance planning. So, what are some of the strategies we're going to adopt to maximize our resources? Because our resources are very limited. So there's a saying in housing maintenance that we have to abide by, and that's doing more with less. And yeah, I know a lot of people have probably heard that saying, but it's a saying that we have to apply to our maintenance program because the resources are quickly disappearing. The money's not like it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's important we adopt these strategies. And, we talk about some of these strategies that we can do so that the maintenance, we don't get hit by a big maintenance bill. And that's why we do annual inspections, really. Okay, so here's a 5-year plan that we've developed. Okay, so rentals or rent to own. In 2021, we're planning 8 new construction projects. 4 are underway right now. Melissa was talking about that one before Habitat. We also applied for another 8. We know we're going to get 4. And then we're going to apply every year to CMHC for the next 5 years. Well, the maximum houses we can get is 4 a year. So we're hoping over the next 5 years, we'll get 24 band rentals. Then under home ownership, we're very conservative. We're hoping, at least in 2021, this year, we're hoping 2 people go into home ownership. That's where they go get a mortgage and build their home. And then from 2022 to 2023, our goal is to get at least 3 people per year for the next 5 years. So hopefully over that 5-year cycle, we'll have 14 people in new housing construction. And then renovations, again, we're very modest in our estimates. We hope I hope we miss our target. I hope it's a lot higher than this. But we decided let's be conservative and hope that one person this year accesses the loan program to renovate their house. 2022, 1 again, and then 2023, we started increasing. So we're hoping over 10 years, we'll get 10 band members. These are private homeowners, come and borrow money under the program and fix their houses. Again, we just put an average loan of 50. You can actually borrow up to 100,000, but most people, I don't know if they'll borrow the full 100,000. But again, these are repairs that they could be all cosmetic. And because it's your money, your loan, you decide what you're going to renovate. Same thing with the home ownership. And then the renovations, like private home, we're looking at 2 or 3, maybe 14 under a ban repayable option. So there's 120,000 a year. So 600,000 over the next 5 years. So we'll renovate 14. And then ban rentals, maybe renovating 1 a year under our, again, a $25,000 average. So we're looking at, on average, our renovations being at $25,000 and renovating about 7 ban rentals. So over the next 10 years, we're hoping to build through the ban rental program and the home ownership program, 38, very conservative number, 38 new units and 31 renovations. Obviously, we're not going to get nowhere close to our housing shortage of 99 or 71 people on the housing list. This number could change, though. I mean, if it could be higher too, because if we get more people under home ownership, then obviously that's going to make a big impact on our numbers. Or if we build more rentals, we decide to do another option where the band does a rent to own and does their own financing, we could do more rentals than the CMHC, outside of CMHC. So that's some of the stuff we're looking at. Again, this is just a plan. We're very conservative in our estimates and hoping, if we can hit this plan over the next 5 years, I think that's a great thing for the community, because the housing program was very stagnant for the last 5 or 6 years. So it's important that we grow. We do have service lots available. There's a couple of subdivisions, and I think there's a lot of room for growth in the community. And I think it'll be great for the community, especially under home ownership, for people to own their own homes. And with the way rents going off reserve, it's going to be very attractive to come back home to live in the community, because the rent's going to be a lot lower. Or if you want to do home ownership, again, the mortgages, we're at historically low interest rates, lowest in a generation. So that means if you borrow 100,000 today at today's interest rates, you're only paying about $420. So if you want a $200,000 mortgage, you're talking about $840, and then a $300,000 house will cost you about $1,200. Again, that's very affordable in terms of what you can build. Okay. So again, home ownership outreach is now available. Members can get a mortgage, build a home in the community. You pick design, cost, and builder. This outreach is, I work with you, like I'll give you this new budget worksheet, and we'll figure out what your costs are, what you think they are, based on, I'm using $275,000 a square foot right now, because I think it's a lot higher. So 1,000 square foot house, 275 will cost you 275. Then there's your sewer connection, electrical, landscaping. So we're looking at your housing cost about 200, 3%. So maybe 280,000. Architect or your plan. So that's how we arrive at a house for 390, which is 300,000. These are some of the costs that you would absorb when building a house. It's not just about construction, but you got to do the sewer, septic, and all of that. Okay. So this poster, if you've seen around the community, this is me. So this is who you're talking to. I'm at the bottom. This poster has been around. So right now I'm getting about 2 or 3 calls on average per week from Saugeen Bend members. Again, it says, are you interested in home ownership, renovating your existing home, or purchasing home? On the second question, it says, do you need financial counseling? So you could tell your community, other community members, that you don't have to be interested in home ownership or renovations. If you just want to know about credit, if you need credit counseling, if you have debt collectors chasing you, or if you have credit issues, I'll work with you, or if you need help budgeting. So about half the people I work with under this outreach program are not interested. They're just, they're having some form of financial difficulty, either with their credit score or just, living costs. So I help them develop a budget. So, okay, so that's about it for me today. Hopefully we are going to have another workshop again. Hopefully, I don't know when it will be. Hopefully it'll be in the community, and I'll be able to meet with members again. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to have the outreach program in the community once COVID, obviously I'm hoping this COVID is going to go away by early fall or whenever. And what we'll do is have the outreach right in the community, so that band members can meet with me in a private office at the band office, and then I provide counseling. So thank you. And that's about it for my presentation. Oh, have I shared the screen?
Back to me. Okay. Great. Thank you, Scott, for that presentation today. Your knowledge and input thus far has been really invaluable to developing the strategic plan, so we really appreciate that. So if you're interested in being put into the door prize draw, if you could please leave your name in the comment section below, your name and number, as well as if you'd like to double your chance to win a prize. You can also go to the SurveyMonkey link down below as well and complete the housing survey there. It will prompt you to, at the end of the survey, leave your name and number there again. So that will allow you to have 2 ballots into the draw. And we are drawing for 2 $100 gift cards, Visa gift cards. So that is it from us today. Thank you for tuning in, and be safe, be kind, and bon appetit.